This is the form that we're going to flex form. So we're just getting ready for this. We've set this up. It is a long piece of very flexible, high-density polyethylene plastic. It's 3 millimeters thick. We have blocked it. We have clamped a block on one end of it so that it doesn't slide when we lift up the other end. We have also clamped the end of the portion that must remain flat. And this is the end that is going to be lifted up. So we're going to lift it as after we fill it with concrete, just at the point where the concrete is not going to run down. And we're going to support that bent end with this plywood structure that's going to keep the shape. It's slightly curved. It's actually not the perfect structure for what we're trying to achieve, but this is what we had readily available for the test pour. So now we are filling the form, and we are filling it with concrete that is actually left over from a customer pour. And we're going all the way up to the top of the foam strips, and the foam strips are 15 millimeters thick. And we're just moving along from one end of the form to the other. The way we will know when it's time to flex the form is by temperature. Right now, measuring with the laser thermometer, the temperature of the mix is just under 15 degrees. And what we're looking for is the point at which the temperature begins to rise. And that's when we know that hydration has started to take place, and the concrete is beginning to stiffen up. So now the form is completely filled, but the temperature is still around 14 degrees. So we have to wait. The temperature had hit a minimum of 12.3 after we had placed the concrete, and now it is, looks like about 12.9, 13.0. So it's going up a little bit, and I had just tested it, and the mix is actually quite stiff, so I don't think that if we flex it now, it's going to run down. So I'm just lifting this up right now to see how it behaves, and it seems to be staying in place. So we're going to lift this up now and place our plywood support underneath it, and then cover it up and cover it with heating blankets. Now, the plywood is clamped. It's a little difficult to see, but we have a block of wood attached to the side of the plywood, and that is clamped to the table. And the concrete, it's separating a little bit at the top. We might have jumped the gun a little bit and lifted it up a little bit too soon. Also, this is a really steep angle. It's pretty much vertical at the very top, and. But I'm just afraid that if we wait until the concrete is too stiff, then we will crack it on the top surface, on the molded surface. The concrete does not seem to have bulged a great deal. It has bulged a very small amount in this area here, but for the most part, it's keeping its volume, and it's staying quite uniform all along the bend. So within that bulged area, if it is important for us to keep a uniform thickness, that is just something that we would have to grind after this piece is completely set. But with the property of this material, if we touch it with a trowel at this point, it will simply become fluid and will run out. Whereas right now, it's staying put where it's supposed to be. So now I've covered it with plastic, and it's to keep the moisture from escaping. And now we're going to cover it with heating blankets and turn them on. The temperature right now is 15.7, so it is going up. So we probably should have waited until about this point before we put this up. But anyways, this is live and learn for the next time. And now we have this piece wrapped in blankets in a rather awkward way. We've had to actually wrap the blanket right around the plywood structure, and we've clamped it to hold it in the wrapped position, and the other blanket is lying flat on top of the horizontal portion, and we actually have a little end that couldn't be covered by the two power blankets, so we've got a little sunbeam blanket taking up the slack there. The two power blankets are on a temperature controller, and right now it's showing 57 degrees Fahrenheit, and I don't know how to change this thing to Celsius, but the power will shut off when temperature reaches 114 Fahrenheit, which is roughly 45 or so degrees Celsius. And now we can leave this overnight, and we will look at it tomorrow. So this is the next morning, and we are unmolding the flex formed piece. This is actually too early to unmold normally. We would normally leave it for at least 24, better 36 hours. This has only been about 16 hours. So immediately we see that the piece has pulled away from the plywood supports. Now, we did not actually clamp it to the plywood, and so that is obviously our fault, but there is a little bit of curling happening. That is due to the blanket being on one side only, I suspect. But anyways, it looks like the piece has pulled away. This is obviously something to watch for, and to make sure that we clamp the plastic and the foam to the plywood supports. The dark spot is where the plastic where the polyethylene film was in contact with the material, so it's still it shows some residual moisture in the piece. The rest is dried out, which explains why it curled away. When moisture is allowed to escape from the material, it will shrink on that side. It doesn't shrink on the side that's in contact with the white plastic on the back. Here's a close-up. Obviously, you can see the polyethylene film imprint on the material. It does mold itself like that, and there is a little bit of a thickening in this area right here. So if it's important to have a piece that has absolutely perfect uniform thickness, obviously this is a lesson that we should have waited a little bit longer for the concrete to set up before we actually deformed it. Like I said yesterday, we jumped the gun and moved it too soon. So there's another lesson to be learned. In the case for my intended application, immediate application, this actually would not matter because this part would be concealed inside another piece of concrete. Both the foam and the concrete had pulled away from the white plastic. And it doesn't really take very much effort at all to pull away the foam because it's only hot glued to the white plastic. Okay, so now we're going to tip it on edge on the table. Okay, and let's see what the surface looks like. Well, white plastic releases beautifully, and we've got a very nice surface here. You can see the reflection of the other pieces on the table and the surface. So the surface replication is just perfect with this. It's quite wet because obviously it was in contact with plastic, and so the residual moisture is still coming out of the material. The thickness is fairly uniform. There is a little bit of a thickening right near the bend, as I suspected there would be, but this is easily remedied with a grinder to ensure a very, very uniform thickness. The only thing that we did not expect was that slight curvature at the very top, and that was because the piece had curled. We did not clamp it to the top of the plywood, and obviously that was a mistake. We should have done that. And then the horizontal portion, of course, the thickness is very uniform, and there were no concerns at all about that being anything else. But it keeps its shape, and it's quite strong, and the surface is quite nice. So yes, as long as we wait a little bit longer before we deform it, I think we will not see the same problems that we're seeing now. So now we have this FlexForm piece standing up in our messy front room, and it's just it's just freestanding on one end. It's just standing on the tile floor, and there it is. And we've got it. We've got this makeshift support of blocks of styrofoam on the other end, and it's just standing there without any problems. The surface, now that it's dry, it's a mirror surface. It replicated the texture of the plastic, of the white plastic, exceptionally well. There's a dull spot for it. That's because we didn't wipe off the water, but just let it dry naturally. So that's a little bit of roughness due to the salts that the water brought up to the surface.